said that political, financial and economic collapse is urgent logic now. How can we solve this and what will happen after?
There's only one way to solve it, and that is to listen to Maitreya. Maitreya is coming out very, very soon. He will speak, he will give his analysis of the situation, why we have got into this condition, and how to mend the whole world problem. And it means a drastic reconstruction of the world's economy. It's not a question of using sellotape to put the things together and make it seem okay. They will do that. The governments of the world today are planning how to do that. But it's repeating the old structures, the old ways of doing things, and they no longer serve humanity, so they will not work. They might work for a year, a couple of years, maybe 5 years, but after that, the same situation will accrue. The only answer to the problem from Maitreya's point of view, which is from humanity's point of view, is to change the whole thing. And he says only one thing will solve the economic problem. The essential first step is for humanity to see itself as one, that they're not, as there certainly are, separate nations, different levels of economic advance and so on, but to see the world as one whole, as a group, humanity, brothers and sisters, as a family, in other words. And as families, take whatever comes into the household, from the father, from the mother, whatever, they share it out. Everybody has what they need out of what they have. That's a lot or a little, according to the resources of the family. But it's shared among the family, according to their need. Something similar has to take place in the world. Maitreya says only one thing can reconstruct the world, and that is the creation of trust between the nations. To abandon this terrible economic competition which has brought about this situation. The situation we're in is one of human greed at the mercy of market forces. Market forces he calls the forces of evil, because they have inbuilt inequality in them. They benefit the few, but at the expense of the many. And so he calls them evil. And so long as, and they're also blind, they don't respond to reason. They are simply blind forces. And he says any government of whatever nation, large or small, which blindly follows the already blind forces of the economy, of the market, is leading its nation to destruction. And so he says we have to abandon the market economy in its present form. There is some benefit in the market, there is a place for the market, but to just blindly follow it is sheer folly and has led to the present situation. So his aim is to inspire humanity to see itself as one, the first step. That first step is essential to lead to a more equal sharing of the world's resources. It doesn't have to be everybody having the same amount of butter, the same amount of cheese and bread and so on. Nothing like that. But a very simple but radical reconstruction. And there are various interrelated plans which have already been worked out by disciples of the masters, of whom Maitreya is the leader. And these are men and women of great reputation in their own domain. And they have worked out this series of schemes, any one of which humanity might adopt. the best of them, the simplest and the most far-reaching, the ideal plan from the master's point of view is this. Each nation would be asked to make an inventory of everything that it has, creates, builds, grows, and so on, and also one of what it has to import, what it doesn't have, what it needs, in other words, from outside. And in this way, the world's resources in total will be known. These will be fed into computers. A new organization as part of the United Nations would be formed under the aegis of a master or at least a very high initiate, a third or higher degree initiate, to make sure that it is lawful, carried out with no corruption and so on. And then each nation would be asked to make over in trust for the world as a whole into a common pool that which it has in excess of its needs. So they're not asking for everybody to give in, 20,000 liters of wine or butter or cheese or whatever it is, but that which it has in excess of what they actually use yearly and need. And out of that common pool, the needs of all the nations would be met. So the large nations who have great excess would put more into the plan, of course, America, maybe Russia, China, the European states, and so on, the very developed states. And the smaller states or the more underdeveloped states in Africa and elsewhere would put in less into the plan. But everyone would put in according to their excess. And out of that excess, everyone would be served. There seemed to be no shortage of food in the world. In fact, there is a surplus of food in the world, some 10%, if it were distributed, but it's not distributed. So 3/4 of it is taken by the developed nations and wasted and stored, while millions of people are starving to death in the world. To Maitreya, that is an anathema, a crime. And he says, how long can you put up with this state of affairs? How can you watch these people die before your eyes on television and call yourself men? So he sees this as absolutely contrary to what is needed to solve the economic problem. The economic problem is only a problem of distribution, nothing else. Distribution and redistribution. If that were solved, every nation in the world would have enough for its needs. We would also have to simplify overall the needs of humanity in certain areas. For example, wood. We are using so much wood, we are felling trees by the millions all over the world and the forests of the world, which replenish and give to the world our oxygen. So the world is getting starved of oxygen. Meantime, these forests used to, when they were there as trees, absorb the carbon dioxide which we are producing by our use of fossil fuels and so on. So everything that we're doing is adding to our problems. And if we used our brains, if we rationalized the whole thing, we could solve the problems of the world, I don't say overnight, but relatively simply and very fast.
And after 98,000 years, masters are coming back, but are we really ready for them and Maitreya, or why are they coming now and when exactly are they coming?
They are already here. Already there are 14 masters in the world, actually living in the outer physical world. The masters have never left the world, let us be clear, but they have lived in the remote mountains and deserts of the world. They have worked on the inner planes, not the outer physical planes. Now this is being reversed. For the first time for 98,000 years, a large group of them are coming out, 2/3 of the masters are coming out onto the physical plane and carrying out their work vis-a-vis humanity, with humanity, in cooperation with humanity. And this is an extraordinary happening. I mean, I can't exaggerate the extraordinary, momentous import that this will have on human life. These are masters, perfected masters, who have gone through every degree of life on earth and have reached a point where they don't have to be in the world. They are here only to serve the plan of evolution. So we owe them an enormous debt, but they do it gladly, willingly. That's why they're here. They want only to serve the plan of evolution. And the humanity, once given the framework within which it can work sanely, without corrupting the physical world, without bringing about this global warming, increasing global warming, and decimating the world of trees and so on, and polluting the planet on the physical plane, on the subtle planes, in the air, in the oceans, in the land, to a degree that no one on earth except the masters absolutely realize. We know it's taking place, but we don't know to what degree this pollution is taking place. The masters see pollution as the #1 killer in the world. It undermines our immune system and leaves us then open to a host of illnesses and diseases, many of which we have finished with long ago and thought were rooted out of our lives, but they're coming back because of the breakdown in human immunity.
And what is the purpose of transmission meditation?
Oh, well, that's another thing. Can we finish with the political economic thing before we go there? You asked me when are they coming back. I say they're already coming back. There are 14 masters in the world, and there are 7 major spiritual centers in the world, outlets for spiritual force. These are 5 major cities and 2 minor cities. Not in order of importance, but from west to east. I'll give them New York, London, Geneva, Darjeeling, and Tokyo. These are the 5 major centers of force through which the masters send spiritual energy. And the 2 minor ones are Moscow and Rome. And there is a master in each of these. The 5, New York, London, Geneva, Darjeeling, and Rome, into these 5 centers in 1975 came a master. So there's now a master in each of these cities. A little later came 2 others, one into Moscow, one into Rome. That accounts for 7. Since then, 7 more masters have come into the world, and they're in various other cities. And not all in cities, but mainly in cities. And they usually live on the outskirts of the city, in the suburbs, you know. And then there is Maitreya, the master of all the masters, who came into the world in 1977, July 19th, 1977. He descended from his mountain in the Himalaya on the 8th of July, stayed some days on the plains in Pakistan to acclimatize a body which he has created precisely for this work. And he will be in this body, created by thought for this event, for the next 2,350 to 100 years. And every time we come into incarnation and see him, we will see Maitreya as the center of the world, the center as a teacher, not as a politician or a man of power or in any official post, but as the teacher for the world. He holds the office of world teacher. It's a huge high office in hierarchy where the masters are chosen who are evolved enough to do that. And Maitreya is tremendously evolved. He's so evolved, so pure, he can embody what we call the Christ principle, the energy of love. And he is the Lord of love. That's his nature. And that energy is what is the gift that he has to give to humanity, to lift us, to inspire us, to become what he says, to become what you are already, a great spiritual being, a God. Each of us is a soul in incarnation, and therefore is divine. But we don't know we are divine. We certainly don't act as if we are divine. The difference between us and the masters is that they know they are divine and they exemplify this divinity. They are men without fault, absolutely filled with unconditional love, with an intelligence which you can't begin to imagine, with wisdom of all the ages. They are extraordinary, evolved men, but simple men. Simple, humorous, just like the people you know around you whom you like, but so much more than anyone you could imagine. And Maitreya is like that, a simple man, but filled with the divinity which is his nature. And out of that nature, he will inspire humanity to want to be like the masters, to follow them, to look up to them in a way where a child looks up to his father, to learn, to trust, to take for granted that he will show him the right things to do, the right way to go, how not to get hurt, how not to make mistakes, and so on. It's that kind of relationship which the masters will evoke from humanity. So we will see these wonderful men and try to be like them, try to be purer and kinder and less filled with greed and selfishness and competition. Competition, he says, holds everyone back. Competition is the anathema to life. It is the opposite of what we need. We are in life to cooperate, to act as a unity. Diverse, of course, everyone himself or herself, as diverse, and this is true of the nations, as diverse as anyone could wish to be, and yet filled with a sense of unity with the whole. So it is a kind of unity in diversity, which he sees as the future for humanity. Instead of competition and greedy competing for markets and stealing and corruption at all levels, a cooperative, forward-looking plan which will take us logically and rationally into expressing what is best in humanity. What people want, what religious people mean when they talk about God, when they talk about Jesus or the Christ or Buddha or Muhammad. They mean the best which can be known about human nature. He says, it's all there. It's not something we have to find. It's all there, but it's covered up by greed and selfishness and fear, above all fear. Fear of losing something we think is precious, but it's not precious. It's easily given away and shared. And people, I heard a terrible thing from Mr. McCain the other day. He said, Mr. Obama wants people he wants to distribute our wealth, take from the rich and give to the poor. And they all said, boo, boo, terrible, terrible. He says, I don't want to do that. And it was like going back thousands of years to the simple, greedy times when there wasn't enough to go around and nobody would think of sharing. It was such a condition of helplessness in the face of what is major trauma in the world. People are suffering tremendously now, especially in America, because they have come from conditions of super rich or super contented with what they have, got used to ways of living which are more advanced, more gracious, more conditions of surplus than anywhere in the world, a waste economy. And now people are living in their cars. Millions of people have lost their homes because the banks have toughed them out because they can't pay the mortgage. And the mortgages, the conditions of the mortgage, the index has gone up to a point where they may be out of work. Thousands and thousands have been laid off work and they can no longer pay a mortgage. So there's thousands of houses are just being locked up by the banks and people are out in the streets. They're staying with neighbors or friends or family, or they're sleeping in their cars. People, it's called the wilderness experience. This is for large parts of the world, the developed world, the wilderness experience, especially for America. And they're suffering as they've never suffered since 1929 in the Great Recession. This is another 1929, and it will be the last. If we follow the words of Maitreya and the sense, the ideas, the inspiration of Maitreya, it will be the last of all the great economic collapses in the world, and the end of suffering of that kind, and the end of war. We must get rid of war. No longer seeing war as a possibility for any reason whatsoever. A small war could become a big war. A big war, a world war. And if there was world war today, it would be the end of humanity, the end of all life on planet Earth. We now have, for the first time in history, the ability to destroy all life in the world. Every nation against every other nation, using their atomic weapons, would destroy life forever, for millions and millions of years. This would be a dead planet, unable for any life to survive. So we have that choice. We either accept that we are one, accept the principle of sharing, therefore, redistribute more equitably the resources of the world, or face annihilation. It's not a threat, it's the logical result of our action. It's cause and effect. We have to learn the great laws, the laws of life. The major law is the law of cause and effect. Everything we think, everything we do, sets into motion a cause or causes. The effects stemming from these causes make our life, for good or for ill.
But what we will choose?
That's up to humanity. I think, and I can only say for myself, I'm an optimist, you know. But looking at the world, we have never yet destroyed the world. We have been faced with many problems. Humanity is so old, perhaps you cannot imagine. 18.5 million years old. We think we are maybe 3 million or something like that. The masters are the only ones who know, and they say it's 18.5 million years. And so for 18.5 million years, we have fought and wrestled our way to today. At times, the animal kingdom nearly destroyed humanity. The descendants of the dinosaurs, which were still dinosaurs, smaller but faster and more rapacious, destroyed vast numbers of humanity. The human kingdom was on the verge of destruction at certain times. And yet, here we are, 6.7 billion people in the world. We're not out yet, but we can do it. We could do it in a fortnight, just have a little war, a major war, and it would be good night, goodbye to humanity. People think that 9 nations have the atomic bomb. Officially, 9 nations have the atomic bomb. Unofficially, 24 nations have the atomic bomb. And the masters know this, and certain nations know this, but the world as a whole is not allowed to know this. Under the counter, 24 nations, or 9 above the counter, but the others under the counter, 24 nations. And 28 nations have, if not the atomic bomb, the means of mass destruction, biochemical and so on. So in no time at all, we could destroy all life. If we think about Hiroshima, Nagasaki, 2 little bombs dropped on there, atomic bombs, cost, 500,000 at a stroke like that. 500,000 people destroyed in Hiroshima. And that was the early example of the atomic bomb. Now they have nuclear weapons which can destroy millions of people at one stroke. Dropped on London or Paris or Berlin or large city, it could be completely destroyed.
Thank you very much.